Hey up lads and lasses, Damphyre here, back again with some more Infinite Lagrange, and off holiday now, so, you know, new videos and all that good stuff. So, last 3 weeks ago, I recorded the Chimera and Connemara Chaos for you guys. That should release last week. So this week we will carry on with the cruisers. I know I've got a lot of requests at the moment to do things like Marshall Crux module rankings and stuff like that. I genuinely can't do them because I don't have the modules, and I don't know anybody that does have the modules, and then you end up with like a video similar to the FSV where it kind of looks, the quality isn't really there, and it really don't like putting those kind of videos out personally. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll do a poll on the channel and let you guys see what you guys think. If you don't mind that sort of obviously quite lower quality compared to what I usually put out, then yeah, maybe we can consider doing it anyway. So let's have a look at the cruisers. So Connemara Chaos is done. Saw a lot of reports of people saying like Heavy Cannon Chimera does better than Connemara Chaos. I am specifically talking about in PvP when I talk about these. It's due to the fact that, genuinely speaking, with the way the servers run, even the new like NPC like PvE type server, they're running more of a PvE type fleet, which means things like the Chimeras and stuff with heavy cannons really won't do that well, whereas the Connemara Chaos Plasmas, being back row with high evasion, can get some serious damage output up. The only reason most people think the kind of Chimeras do better is because if they do last and do live, they will outdamage the Chaos Plasmas, but they won't. They're a frontline ship. They're going to get hammered into the absolute ground. So yeah, it's more of a how long can a ship survive on the field, as well as, you know, deal its damage, and the Chaos has that hands down over the Chimera because A, its positioning, its dodge rate, and its damage is well up there anyway. So again, against pirate fleets, you can run pretty much whatever fleet you want for the most part. It really doesn't matter that much, with the exception, obviously, with the PvE server being absolutely brutal in what they fling at you. So, that being said, Connemara Chaos was last, and if we go left to right and down at the same time, we are looking at the Lightcone. So, the Lightcone is interesting. It's got two variants that are sort of okay and used for different things. One of them's like quite situational, the other one's just a pretty good damage dealer. So yeah, unfortunately, of those two types that I mentioned, it is not the generic type. The generic type, unfortunately, just isn't particularly great, in my opinion. It has got the warning system, so you can get the increased for your hit rate on your aircraft when you've got fighters in it, the same as the Wing to SAR, same as the other Lightcone variants. So that is nice, and if you don't have Wing to SAR, consider running one or two of these in fleet just to get that bonus if you are running hybrid or swarm. It definitely will help you out a little bit. But that is the only time I can really ever suggest using this over most other cruisers, which will flat out, I think even like CAS, like the base CAS, does outdamage the generic Lightcone. And you can't even bring this in for its anti-air capabilities, which you're kind of expecting it to be okay. It's got area denial anti-aircraft UAV. Unfortunately, it's awful. I don't know what it is about it. I think it's because it's only one of these and it's 25 damage per hit with, you know, okay, the cooldown and lock-on time's good. And again, it can't be targeted, so, you know, it'll last forever, in theory, as long as the ship isn't blown up. But even with its, you know, upgrades and stuff, it just doesn't really work particularly well. And then the Minecraft launching system, it's got anti-aircraft here as well, but it just doesn't seem to actually do what it says it does. Anyway, so This ship is mid-row, if I remember off the top of my head, which means you do want to jump into armor first, in my opinion, just to give it the double health buff, just to keep it alive on deck, well, on board a little bit longer. After that, I would probably go into its Minecraft system or the warning system. If I'm running this specifically for the buff to my fleet because I'm running hybrid or swarm, definitely the warning system next. If you are not running hybrid or swarm, go into the Minecraft launching system here. And it's not too bad. Definitely pick up the double hit rate, including the one against cruisers and higher class ships. It will actually help this thing out a little bit. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I'm always seeing like a 20% damage buff whenever picking the large target correction on this, whereas in other ships where I tend to ignore it, I'm only seeing like a 2-3% damage increase, where it's quite noticeable in this one. It's like its missiles are really, really stupid or something. So there is that. The overall hit rate, though, that's always a good one to go for, especially if you're attacking frigates and cruiser fleet, frigates and destroyer fleet, sorry, will certainly, definitely, absolutely help out there. Because like I said, the missiles on this thing are just, I don't know why. They're actually, you know, not bad missiles. You've got 280 damage per hit. There's 2 weapon systems, 8 seconds. It's firing 8 missiles. It should be pretty, you know, substantial, but it's really just lackluster at the end of the day. After that, 100% double cooldown on this thing, because the cooldown is awful. Like 24 seconds attack interval between the rounds is really bad. So double hit rate, double torpedo damage, sorry, double cooldown. Consider going into maybe one of the lock-on efficiencies just to help the anti-air missile system out a little bit. It's not necessary, but you've got the spare slot anyway, and then going into the double damage is my recommendation here. So yeah, you can go lock-on. The crit damage is... See, the rest aren't particularly great anyway. Siege damage is awful on this thing. I wouldn't run it for siege. System HP doesn't really matter all that much. You're not seeing too much sort of anti-system at the moment. Crit damage received by the system is same thing as before. You're not seeing too much anti-system damage at the moment, and you've only got 7 slots to play with. So your 2 hit rate, 2 cooldown, 2 damage kind of like leaves you with a lock-on efficiency anyway. So yeah, it's okay. It's very middle of the road in terms of damage output. After that, I'd recommend going into the Tundra anti-air system, picking up the Anti-Aircraft Network 2, which is taking advantage of the anti-aircraft UAV position support system to coordinate the projectile anti-aircraft weaponry of ships in the mid-row, extending the anti-aircraft range to same row. This is actually quite an interesting strategy, but I will want to point out it's not as good as you'd kind of hope it would be. So you need 3 light cones to get this to trigger, and you put 3 of these in, and they all have the anti-aircraft network. It needs to be your flagship as well, if I remember rightly. And then everything in the mid-row, theoretically, gets anti-aircraft of the same row. So then you could, you know, stack your mid-row full of ships, and then, you know, ignore front row, ignore rear row, and all of a sudden you've got this like fleet in the mid-row that should devastate swarm and what have you, because they all got row-wide AA. Unfortunately, it definitely works, but the damage output of all the ships in the mid-row, depending on what you put there, obviously, is not particularly great. I tried this out with like a pretty standard sort of idea that I thought of with like ST-59s and Lightcones, and I had some Chimera Defensive in there as well, being another mid-row ship with high tank, and I put Guardian support in there because it's a mid-row ship that already has good anti-air capability, and it's a support healer, so it can like heal the rest of the fleet and stuff. Unfortunately, I just didn't find bringing 3 of the generic light cones in for the anti-aircraft network too to just be worth it at all. And so yeah, unfortunately it's not great, but if you are going to run light cones, at least pick it up anyway. It will help out to a degree. So yeah, I think the reason it fails is because it only affects projectile anti-aircraft weaponry, so things like cannons, stuff like that, which have a hard time hitting frigates and destroyers, have a much harder time hitting dodgy fighters and bombers. I'm pretty certain that's probably the reason why you'd need Null Pointer to go in and really sort of determine it with his special tools that he uses, but unfortunately that's about it I can say on it. Other than that, hit rate is going to help your UAV do a little bit more damage. Again, the damage is pretty measly on the UAV, but you don't really have too much of an option. After that, target lock-on speed and potentially the cooldown. I personally, because the UAV is so bad, I kind of ignore these for the most part and then pick up the chance of being reduced hit by guided weapons. This will actually help you out with your survivability a little bit more. So yeah, in my opinion, it's anti-aircraft network. Actually, it's detection to jamming first, going into the anti-aircraft network, going into the attack radar, and then the cooldown. The lock-on speed you can kind of ignore. It's not awful on this thing, as you can see, but it's not amazing either for a UAV for that instance anyway. After that, moving up into the defensive batteries, again, this is like the cannon systems we were just talking about. You want double hit rate against fighters, corvettes here. You probably want the double hit rate, the hit rate against the frigates and destroyers as well. So you go hit rate. You have 5 slots. The damage is so minimal here at 25 that 10% is only going to give you 2.5 damage, which really isn't particularly great. So you might as well pick up the extra hit rate and then go double cooldown and then the lock on, ignoring the cannon damage altogether because it probably isn't going to help much. But, you know, at least a little bit of, you know, extra hit rate against frigates and destroyers and hit rate against fighters, corvettes may allow it to, you know, apply some damage output. So yeah, again, this is anti-aircraft support, so it only attacks ships in the same row, but I've not seen it working correctly. It seems to me that it's actually counter-attack. However, if you do go into the Tundra system first and pick up that strategy, you will then make those cannons, you know, row wide, so that will help out. Warning system. Again, if you haven't picked this earlier, pick it up now. Maybe you will run some fighters at some point. But if you are not running fighters at all, you can just ignore it. In my opinion, it's second to pick up if you are running any kind of fighters, because it provides more support with that strategy. Or it's not even a strategy, really, is it? Oh, it's a strategy, it's a count. It provides more support for your fleet with that strategy than it does as a ship itself. Whether that 20 CP is worth it for information chain is not really when you got Wing to SAR, which is 6 CP or whatever for the exact same thing. So yeah, it's a bit unfortunate that, but there you go. Propulsion, same as usual. I go double warp speed, cruising speed. However, you can go double cruising speed, warp speed. That choice is up to you depending on how you fight. I like setting up scouts and bouncing my guys in, warping around and what have you, hence double warp speed. Moving over to the B-type, the anti-aircraft type. Now, this is where it gets quite interesting, and it's due to the fact that its weapon systems you just kind of ignore. They're generally pretty non-existent. It has the ability to do some anti-aircraft again. We have a Tundra Interceptor UAV. You get 2 of these, though, which is quite nice. A little bit better than the other one, the Area Denial. Actually, no, the Area Denial, is it 2 of these as well? I make the mistake. It is 2 of those as well. I made a mistake. But for whatever reason, these ones work, whereas on the generics, they don't work. It's either that or the missile system's working on this a bit better. I will say that, you know, it has got an aircraft area denial missile, as well as its missile defense system that we see earlier. Although this missile defense system is a little bit different. It's a lower damage, higher firing rate. Yeah, like 1 attack per round with 2-second coolons and 2-second cooldowns with 3-second lock-ons. You're also coming in with intercept here and anti-aircraft special ammo and all sorts of fun stuff. You get no stats whatsoever for the anti-area denial, anti-aircraft command center, which is interesting. You kind of think this would give you at least a hit rate buff or something, right? So, you know, there it is. The thing about this ship is, you'll notice we have intercept on its weapon systems. We get a 25% bonus to intercept here. On the propulsion system, you can move it to front row, giving you another 5% intercept and 6% versus torpedoes. And you just can keep stacking this intercept on this thing, putting it into the front row, that they are quite literally just mitigating 60% of the missiles coming in against your fleet, which is absurd potential here. And even if you don't move it to the front row, which is, I actually recommend moving to the front row if you are front row heavy. Like, for example, you're running 8 IO and a couple of Chimera. You know, a couple of these out in the front row doing intercept for that row is disgusting. However, if you don't run front row heavy, you can, you know, move these back and just leave them in the mid row. You're still getting 25% damage plus, you know, all the other bonuses going on. And you sit them there, and they'll just screen out the mid-rows missile systems. I've seen these things like turn HT Callistos into like FG-300s because all the missiles just got shot down, and the only thing actually hitting off the Callistos was his AA cannon system, which is kind of hilarious. So these are really, really, really good ships. They're a little bit situational in the fact that you need to like preemptively know that your enemy, especially in PvP, are going to be running missile ships, and if they are, a couple of these will ruin their day. You're getting silly amounts of intercept on this. I've seen upwards of 72% intercept on these things, which is absurd. And I only had 2, and I had 78.6%, I think it was, or something crazy. Can you just imagine only 30% of the enemy's missiles coming through, and that was Callistos and stuff? They've just had a 70% damage nerf because 2 of these are in fleet. So it's a really, really good ship, but like I said, it's very situational. Its AA capabilities are average at best. It is no wing to SAR in terms of AA potential, but it does reasonably well, so you can consider running these as AA, depending. Personally, if you got wing to SAR, I'd recommend running that for the AA instead of this. But yeah, if you want that intercept and you want a bit of AA, but you're mostly more of a swarm fleet, so you got your own fighters and stuff, this might actually do you a little bit better in that situation. Whereas in hybrid, you're running these specifically for that intercept, or you just don't need to run them at all, and you run your wing to SARs in hybrid fleet. So, going into the armor system, straight off, because you're either running this mid row or front row, so you definitely want to tank it. So you want to get your ship HP up for certain. It's got a nice healthy amount of HP. I think that's genuinely just due to the fact that it's a Noma ship. So it has a nice like base stat of HP. So pumping this up, you know, another 20% is actually quite good. Moving on from there, if you are including this in hybrid or swarm, go into your warning system, pick up hit rate for fighters by 30% now. If you're running it in a mortal fleet just to stop even more damage coming through so you can out-heal everything, you can ignore the warning system. However, most of the time, when I've seen a mortal fleet, it is running carriers, so you probably want to pick up the warning system anyway there, because it will just buff up the fighters and bombers, etc. quite nicely. And, you know, who doesn't want more hit rate on their fighters and bombers so they can get more damage output? After that, going into the Minecraft system, and I, straight off the bat, pretty much initially pick up the radar anti-missile enhancement. So now I've got a 25% bonus to intercept on top of its flat bonus, which we can't actually see. So yeah, it's just it's a lot of intercept already at that point. I then personally do try and go for more of an anti-aircraft build here. That's because the missiles at 40 damage per hit aren't particularly good. Yeah, it's got one single, standard missile ship system, but generally speaking, it's more about this missile system that fires, rapid firing of missiles. It's pretty quick. 2-second cooldown, 3-second lock on. Like that a lot. You also get an 85 increased damage per hit against aircraft. So now you're doing 125 damage per hit on them. You've got a pretty good lock on efficiency. And you are row wide at base, so it's just quite nice. So intercept for me is what I go for first. Going into hit rate against fighters and corvettes. Picking up the reducer time required for the system's weapons to pre-target a flying target by 1 whole second. This is actually huge. It normally takes about 6 to 7 seconds for a lot of ships to lock on. So you're reducing that by an entire second. So it's it's almost a 20% buff in some cases, or about 15% buff to its ability to get more damage output quicker. So it's actually quite a big upgrade, and I highly recommend it. Spread out warhead is what I pick up next, where when the system's anti-aircraft weapon hits an aircraft, there's a 20% chance to deal 100% crit damage on all aircraft that's attacking you. This thing can spread damage like nobody's business, and it's kind of disgusting when it happens. When this triggers and you just see like a load of health drop on all the enemy fighters that are attacking this thing, and your fighter swarm comes in and now they've got like 20% less HP to deal with, it's really, really paramount that if you are running this for the anti-aircraft, to definitely pick up the spread out warheads. It's really, really strong. After that, it's a bit more of a generic. Go for the extra hit rate here. I should have picked that up earlier, really. So you go radar enhancement, intercept, double hit rate. Probably the hit rate against fighters, corvettes first, then the standard hit rate. Then you go for the stealth recognition, the spread out warheads for your 5. So your 3 slots left. Double cooldown just to increase it further. The other missile enhancement you can go for, you can either go for damage, but the way this works is it actually buffs the base damage, not the anti-aircraft special ammo, so you will only be getting 4 damage per hit for 10% extra damage here. However, again, it's one of those where crit damage received by systems not particularly great, increased system HP not particularly great. So you can either go that. If you are going to pick between damage and one of these sort of dead systems, pick the system HP. It will probably keep the system alive a little bit longer if, new lands do become a bit more meta and we start seeing more of them knocking out weapon systems and that kind of stuff. Yeah, system HP is probably the better out of these two. If not, pick up the damage there, will do quite nicely. After that, I forgot to mention the lock-on radar efficiency, which is the, is it the base version? Yeah. The base version of hit rate actually gets buffed on this ship. 10%, 5% weapon damage you can kind of ignore here as well. It's not particularly going to help you that much. So you've gone armor system, you've gone warning system, you've gone into your Minecraft projectile launching array. If you are going to run this front line, you are going to want to pick up the missile tracking radar. I personally keep it mid-row, so my next is into the anti-aircraft pod, where if you want it front row, move it front row now. I don't think you should be moving front row too early, and that's mostly due to the fact that you're already getting 25% missile intercept into the mid row, where the majority of the missiles are going to be hit. If you are front row heavy, though, that is the only time you could consider moving this early to the front row for the intercept, where you go into the main system, pick up its intercept, go to the anti-aircraft UAV, pick up the intercept and move to front row. And then from there, you know, carry on with the main weapon system. After the main weapon system, you're going into hit rate. It's going to help a little bit. And the flight cooldown. Lock-on speed's not going to matter too much here. Again, these are pretty quick to lock on at 2 seconds, so it's not something to really worry about too much there. After that, you kind of like probably going into the defensive battery system, or you're going into the prop system. The prop system, again, this is the front. Oh, sorry. Yes, I made a mistake there. You go not into the UAV system if you want to move it front row. That's just for an extra intercept. Go into the propulsion system, sorry, and you change position to front row. Sorry about that. It's been a long holiday, and I've forgotten stuff, clearly. So, this is the system which moves you to the front row. You get a 5% interception on missile and a 6% additional to torpedoes. This stacks with a 25% intercept off the main system, and it stacks with the UAV's additional, I think it's again 5% to intercept missiles. And this affects the aircraft though and the UAV, which is kind of awkward because sometimes I think if it's locked on, it doesn't actually work. But there's a flat increase of, I think it's like 35% flat increased intercept chance here, and this is why it's kind of disgusting against missiles, like just in general. So yeah, sorry. Armor system, warning system, main weapon system, and then into propulsion if you want to move it front row. If not, go Tundra interceptor, pick up the radar package here, the missile tracking radar, and then go into your propulsion system where you'll pick up the active anti-missile intercept if you want to move it front row at the end. If not, double warp speed, cruising speed, and again, pick up the defensive battery as and when you want. This is another one of those cannons, and it's just not very good. It's the same pretty much as the main one. We're going to go into double hit rate, I feel, double cooldown, and the lock-on efficiency. But generally speaking, you can almost ignore the defensive battery. It's not great. So that is the Lightcone. Gave you a couple of uses there as well. Over to the assault type. Now the assault type it's pretty good. It's not like absolutely and utterly amazing, but it's up there with like base Callisto in terms of damage output. It'll out damage things like CAS and stuff like that. So it's generally not bad. So it's quite a good ship in the case that, you know, it brings in that warning system. It brings in, you know, base Callisto levels of damage output. So it's okay. It's definitely usable. I've used them in the past when I didn't have Callisto HT because I wanted the warning system, but I wanted, you know, a decent damage output. And I ran the assault and they did very well. Pretty tanky ships, good damage output, utility from the warning system. It's a pretty good ship. I believe that's why I rated it in B or A last time I did the tier list. Anyway, double ship HP, again, warning system, again, same as before. If you're running pretty much any fleet has some form of aircraft, so you pretty much just pick that up second. If you don't run a fleet with aircraft, ignore it, and then go into its Minecraft system here. And yeah, hit rate against just the base hit rate is what you want to pick up here, because you actually have like an okay strategy here. I say okay, it's pretty good, but it's situational. So you don't want to pick up the extra hit rate against cruisers and high-class ships. The missiles on this aren't like the missiles off the generic one where they feel a bit stupid. These ones are actually quite good. So you don't need to worry about it too much at all. So you go hit rate, double cooldown, and then pick up heavy ammo is what I tend to do. And that leaves the last two for damage output. You can prioritize going for the extra damage over the heavy ammo. But I quite like picking up the heavy ammo because by the time you're normally getting light cones out, enemies will also getting cruisers out around the same time, and they're not expecting you to all of a sudden go, oh, he's got, assault light cones out that are dealing an extra 60% with a 30% attack duration. It's kind of scary to see these things appear, and they've got massive damage outputs that early on, because 20% extra damage is nice here. You're gonna get 46 damage for them, which is pretty decent. But it's not 60% damage with a 30% attack duration, is it? And it's just really good damage output at that point. Warhead modification system hits one of the damages as well. So you actually increase the damage by an additional 20% there as well, which is actually quite nice. So this thing can actually spew some pretty good damage output out. Again, you still got that warning system, which is just, it's quite good. And you have the Tundra UAV system. It is a spotter UAV, which is actually really good for this. Spotter UAVs give, in testing, about a 12% increase to hit rate. This is another reason why you don't necessarily need the extra hit rate from the against the cruisers and higher class ships, and that's due to the fact that, you got extra hit rate built in because it comes with a spotting UAV, which is actually really good. When spotting, increase the target hit rate by an additional 10%. I highly recommend, if you are running these, to pick that up. It is one of the best upgrades that actually came out in general. Giving these, it's around a 20% hit rate buff when they actually sort of lock on and starts giving you the spotting info or whatever it is they're supposed to do. Giving the buff is really, really good. And when you've got 8 of these in fleet, all with spotting UAVs, dishing out hilarious amounts of damage, especially if the enemies are cruisers, you will quite sit there. You'll sit back and go, these are really good now, aren't they? And I was actually quite surprised when I was testing them, how good they are. Like I said, they're up there with, Callisto levels of damage. Not HT Callisto, but base Callisto, which is a pretty good, amount of damage. They'll out-damage IOs and stuff like that quite respectably. At the same time, you bringing in a warning system giving hit rate to your aircraft by 30%, increasing hit rate to your aircraft by 30%, and you bringing in, spotting UAVs with that upgrade, you're bringing in, an extra 20% hit rate to just throw around where it's, might be necessary. Sometimes it goes on your bombers, and then you got Vetus Bs with 40% extra, 50% extra hit rate. It's just disgusting. They just don't miss at that point, and they hit really hard. It's just a really good generic ship that just fits in pretty much all fleet types. It's a good damage. It brings support. Definitely don't sleep on the Lightcone offensive. Definitely check it out and give it a go. On the Tundra UAVs, again, flight time, hit rates not necessary here, but lock-on speed will help you out. So picking up the reduced to be hit by guided weapons actually helps you out quite a bit, because then you get a little bit of dodge rate when you're sat in the mid-row, flinging missiles everywhere, supporting everyone, including your aircraft. Great ship. Propulsion, same as before, double warp. Cruise is my general consensus. Generic battery system hasn't changed from any of the ships. Double hit rate, double cooldown, and lock-on efficiency there. And that is the Lightcone. So the assault type goes in, the assault and the anti-aircraft type pretty much both go in any fleet you kind of want. They fit quite nicely. Anti-aircraft being very support-orientated with intercept and stuff like that, and just shredding through missiles, just clearing them from the skies. It's a great ship for that. The assault type bringing very, very, above average damage, bringing in support from warning systems and spotting UAVs. It's a really nice little ship. Definitely give it a go if you get a chance. It's a shame that, even that when it buffs itself, because of the missile system's actually quite good on the assault type, the buff feels a little bit wasted, because it could just buff my ST-59, which is an awful hit rate. That'd be nice, but you can't pick and choose, unfortunately, what they buff on this one anyway. So that's it for the Lightcone. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.